Right, we're at the Not Just Vintage shop today with Ruth Miller, and we're going to talk about vintage haberdashery and vintage buttons. So first of all, we're going to ask Ruth how she started in business and how she developed that business. So first of all, Ruth, how did you get started basically in business, and how did you eventually get into the haberdashery business?
My family background has always been self-employment. My mum and dad have had various shops over the years. I've always had to work in the shop. So it's always been there to give customer service from little. And obviously all my brothers became self-employed, so self-employment has always been there throughout the family.
Part of what,
yes.
What you grew up with?
Yes. Then I had to, through circumstances, I went and worked for the local authority for a long time,
Right.
30 years.
So what changed from that position? What changed your mind?
I was made redundant.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was made redundant and I had to make life choices, which we all do, and I became my dad's full-time carer, which, you know, he was happy at because he didn't want to go into a care home, and it enabled me to do things which I hadn't been able to do before. It gave me a bit more free time.
So did that give you the inspiration to start your haberdashery business?
Well, it enabled me to go to advanced dressmaking classes, which then sparked all my interest again from being little, sewing and making things. I was then able, advanced dressmaking classes, that's when all the interest came back.
Right, and how did you get into the exciting world of buttons?
Well, that was because not accidentally, but I bought a huge job lot of vintage buttons on eBay, and was blown over with this huge amount of buttons, which I was going to use for dressmaking, but they were so nice. Somebody asked me to do a vintage fair with a table of just selling buttons, and I did that table, and it was a sellout. And then I've got the bug then for buying buttons, then haberdashery.
So how long have the haberdashery and the buttons been your main business?
I would say it's my main business for the past 3 years. It was a hobby before then, just doing the odd event. But when my dad passed away, I realised I had to make another life choice. Do I go and work for somebody else, or do I make a business out of haberdashery? So I made that choice.
And how do you actually sell the buttons? I mean, where do you sell them, and who do you sell them to?
I have private groups on Facebook. I sell online on eBay, via Facebook Marketplace. I have a physical shop with Not Just Vintage, because I feel that's important to have a physical shop as well as an online shop.
Which of course is where we are today.
Yes.
Doing the interview.
Yeah. And it's also important to get out and about and do vintage fairs, craft fairs. You need all those outlets. I wouldn't say one is better than the other. They all have the different.
So it's a combination of everything.
Yes.
So
yes.
Obviously you enjoy the meeting of people and talking to people when
yes, that's the best bit for me. I like to physically serve people. Where at vintage fairs, in the shop itself, because I'll come in and serve in the shop.
So that's when you meet your customers.
Yes. Find out what they want, what they're looking for, what they don't like. I think that's an important part, is to have that physical contact.
And do you find you get regular customers?
Yes, definitely. I have other dealers who will come and buy from me, antique collectors of buttons, people who sew. People collect buttons for all different reasons.
All right. And are they really specialists then, that you could say? Are there groups of people who literally deal in nothing but vintage buttons?
Yes, I have antique dealers, people who do reenactments, people who are looking for very specific things. So I'll go out and source those specific things for them.
And would you say that you have is there a particular era for buttons where they're the most popular? Like, have you got any with you that you can show?
Well, these arted buttons that I've got with me, these were from 1945. They were made for 1 year only in the war, and these are highly collectable.
Keep going.
Yeah, go on.
And what about are there specific clubs and things for buttons? International or
Yes,
national
there's the National Button Society, which is American, but there's also the British Button Society, which I'm a member of. Anyone can join the British Button Society. It's a yearly subscription, and they send you magazines, they'll do articles on specific buttons. I also have a private Facebook group called Vintage Haberdashery and Buttons UK.
Is that for everybody? Or?
Anyone can join, and it's for other people to sell haberdashery as well. I found there wasn't many groups where people could buy and sell. It was all about selling. So I like the fact that people can buy and sell in the private group, and then you've got a target audience then.
Right, so how do you see the current scene, shall we say, on vintage buttons and vintage haberdashery? What's happening at the moment?
There's definitely been a turn, I would say, in the last 6 months of people wanting to upcycle, people wanted to learn skills again with sewing, to mend things. It's important for people to they bring back memories for people. People are seeing these things as items of worth.
So they're repairing the vintage clothes and matching the buttons and...
Yes, people who do reenactments, but there's also a thing called slow fashion. People are getting a bit fed up now with fashion, and they want things to last a bit longer. Obviously, things which were made 40, 50 years ago, if they're still around today, they're still going to be around in another 50 years. So it's about buying quality. That's what people are looking for.
There's a massive rental business as well now, isn't there, with clothes? They're redoing vintage clothes, and there are now a lot of websites where you can actually rent them instead of buying them, which is part of what you're just saying.
Yes.
Sustainability.
You know, keeping hold of these things for the future generations and passing on skills.
Also, I think the quality, I mean, when we go shopping, if I can ever get Linda to buy anything, which is about once every 3 years, she says the same thing, is that there's products in the shop are not as good as some of the stuff that she's had for the past 30 years.
Yeah, it is about quality and making that choice, and I think people are being very aware now of the choices that they make.
Don't just throw it away.
Yes.
And redo it. So, what about your own individual style? Do you wear vintage?
I'll try and wear vintage. Where's that question come from? What is my style? I don't know my style.
Everybody's got a style. So you must have a style that the vintage in your mind that you project to people.
Gone blank? Ask me a different question. I don't know that one.
You don't know. What would you recommend then? What's your favourite vintage style?
What era do I like?
Yeah, what's your favourite? Is it, for instance, Marilyn Monroe, or is it Marlene Dietrich, or whatever it is?
I quite like 70s. People think that that's not that old, but believe me,
it is,
70s, 80s
very
now
popular.
is becoming, it's retro, it's coming back in style again.
So
that's my childhood, is from the 70s.
So do you do a bit of disco when you put that clothes
No, I
on?
don't.
No, you don't.
I don't have a disco ball, no. When I'm selling buttons, I don't have a disco ball, no. But when I've had 70s style fabrics on my stall, they get snapped up straight away. I've noticed that turn for the 70s look.
Everybody wants it.
Yeah, everybody wants that at the minute. So it's not necessarily really old stuff that's popular at the minute from the 20s and 30s. It can be from the 80s, it can be from the 90s. It's
So if people want to be part of what you do, what do they type into Facebook so they can see your group, or they can see your vintage? Is it Vintage Vaults?
The business is called the Vintage Vaults. There's a Facebook page called the Vintage Vaults. I have a private Facebook group called Vintage Haberdashery and Buttons UK. But if you just put in vintage buttons on Facebook, my posts will come up because there isn't that many groups out there. You can also contact me via the Not Just Vintage page, or call into the shop and see me. Send me a message.
And where is the shop?
The shop is in Birkenhead. It's is this a test? 136 Oxton Road.
You do know where you are.
Birkenhead. CH41 2TP.
Very good.
Opposite Lidl, with plenty free parking.
Sounds very good. Well, we'd like to thank Ruth for being with us today, and if you want to get into vintage buttons, Ruth is your person. Thank you, Ruth.
Okay, thank you.